Pantry Pride made an unsolicited hostile takeover bid for Revlon, which made makeup. And basically, there was like 40 to 45 bucks a share. The board instituted all these poison pills. The price kept escalating. Then a private equity firm stepped in, also tried to compete for the asset. All along the way, there was enough shenanigans that essentially what Ronald Perelman did was sue Revlon, which went to Delaware court. And from it basically came the current framework of law that we use in this situation. The Twitter board now will have to justify how whatever they come up with is better than this. Because then if they don't, and they're still exercising this broad fiduciary obligations, one thing I'll tell you as a public company director, it is a horrendous process when you get sued, and these guys will be in court for years. And the incremental pressure that this Twitter board has is that they can be held personally liable here. A poison pill is basically a defensive maneuver that a board of directors uses to prevent a hostile takeover. And basically, the simple way it works is it allows the board to create enormous amounts of new shares and effectively dilute the potential hostile acquirer so that it becomes economically unfeasible for them to get enough shares to get control. The way that they do that is that they basically give everybody except a person that crosses a certain ownership threshold. So let's use Twitter as an example. So the Twitter's poison pill basically says that if you get to 15%, you're essentially locked out from a right that then everybody else has that effectively allows them to buy another share of stock at, I think it's a 50% discount. And so what it does is it creates an incentive to essentially almost double the fully diluted shares outstanding of the business. And what that does is it makes it almost impossible for the person with 15% to then go and acquire what's necessary to get to 50%.
Yeah.
There are different kinds of poison pills. There's things that you can do with debt. There's things that you can do with equity. But that's the thing that Twitter did. I think if anybody's interested in it, Nick, maybe you can just bring it up, but you can Google on Wikipedia. There's a phenomenal article called Revlon versus McAndrew and Forbes. And McAndrew and Forbes was the holding company of this very prolific deal maker in the 70s, 80s, and 90s named Ronald Perelman. And what happened was he was the CEO of a company called Pantry Pride. And Pantry Pride made an unsolicited hostile takeover bid for Revlon, which made makeup. And basically, there was like 40 to 45 bucks a share. The board instituted all these poison pills. The price kept escalating. Then a private equity firm stepped in, also tried to compete for the asset. All along the way, there was enough shenanigans that essentially what Ronald Perelman did was sue Revlon, which went to Delaware court. And from it basically came the current framework of law that we use in this situation. And basically what it means is that board directors have these fiduciary obligations to their shareholders. And in some cases, these are very broad fiduciary obligations, meaning do the right thing. But in some really narrow circumstances, all of that collapses and their sole focus is to get the best price. And what a director and a board of directors typically wants to do in a situation like this is not end up in that second bucket. They want to keep all their options available. They don't necessarily want to sell to one person. They're probably going to assume they're going to get fired from the board. They want to stay on for different reasons, et cetera, et cetera. And so right now, what Twitter and their advisors are trying to do is basically stay in that first bucket, have all of the options available to them and not be forced to run an auction. And I think what Elon will try to do is essentially use the public pressure that's going to build and the existing shareholders who own stock at 40 some odd dollars, a chance to basically get, a 20% payday by selling it to Elon for 54 bucks or 53, whatever the price was. And the Twitter board now will have to justify how whatever they come up with is better than this. Because then if they don't, and they're still exercising this broad fiduciary obligations, one thing I'll tell you as a public company director, it is a horrendous process when you get sued, and these guys will be in court for years. And the incremental pressure that this Twitter board has is that they can be held personally liable here. So I think it's getting very complicated very quickly.
Okay, on that note of personal liability, you have director's insurance. So how can that pierce through?
Doesn't cover it.
Have there been examples of this happening?
Yeah, D&O insurance is kind of like, D&O insurance is their director and officer insurance is a layer of protection that we all have as public company directors. We actually also have it as private company directors.
Sure, yeah.
But the amount of coverage changes. But what I'll tell you is D&O coverage tends to be relatively nominal because the risk profile doesn't really include these kinds of tail events. And now what you're talking about is $10 to $15 billion of equity value that's going to either get created for existing shareholders or get taken away. I think the right thing for Twitter's board to do, just to be very precise, is the following. They have to take Elon's offer and they have to create a go shop. I will go and try to get a better price. They won't be able to. And the reason they won't be able to is not a single person who is capable of stepping up with $43 billion would ever get it through regulatory muster. Not going to happen, in my opinion. And anybody with the $43 billion who could buy it will never take it on. Meaning, could Comcast show up? Sure. Could Disney show up? They'll never even look at it.
No, they're not interested.
The people for whom this asset is strategic, Apple, Facebook, Google, ByteDance, Amazon can never get it done. So I think basically it's like, Elon, thank you. We're going to create a go shop. We'll try to find the best offer. I don't think any offer comes in. But then I think what they can do, Freeberg, is if there is this magical plan to shoot rainbows out their ass, they should actually put that to a shareholder vote and let people decide. And I think that's a really fair thing to do that also allows them the credibility and the air cover to say, look, we actually have been working on a plan. We think that that will create an amazing amount of shareholder value. And we just want shareholders to be able to see that, compare it to Elon's offer and decide for themselves.
Either the poison pill will win and Twitter's stock will be down in the dumps 30 days from now. It'll be the same price it was when Elon started accumulating.
$35?
Around that price, it's going to be back in the dumps. And to Chamath's point, all these board members are going to be sued, justifiably so, because they did not pursue the best deal of the company. Or there's one other possibility, that they will find a buyer for Twitter, and that the way they will defeat Elon will be to find another buyer at the same or greater price, and they will place Twitter in the hands of another company who they regard as culturally safer because that company buys into the regime of censorship. And it might be Disney, it might even be Google. I'm telling you, I think that if Google were the company to step up, the administration would ultimately support that deal rather than Elon getting the company. And I think they would tell Lina Khan to stand down in that instance and let it go through.
Okay, Lina Khan, you have
and we will find out. And I'm telling you, in 30 days, we will find out how rigged this game is and how deep the corruption goes, because they will do anything to stop Elon from acquiring this company, even if it means violating their fiduciary duty or violating antitrust law.
In the next 90 days, I don't think you're going to see a better offer. I don't think anybody wants to buy this dumpster fire. Because you have to understand this dumpster fire is twofold, right? On the one hand, you have a whole user usage, bot, spam, harassment problem. And then you have an internal, issue around culture and monetization and all of this other stuff. And so, you have to be really prepared to step in and deal with both of these two issues in a really definitive way. I think that I'm not sure that corporate boards and companies and CEOs have the stomach for all of that. So I don't think there's a better bidder. But I think within 90 days, they're going to probably first try to reject it. I'm not sure that that's in the best fiduciary interests of shareholders. In fact, I don't think it is. And I think to reject it would be more a sign of ego than a sign of logic. And then I think they are going to get sued and they're going to be embroiled in lawsuits for years.